I had no idea what was going on at the time and spent a lot of time doubting my partner, Alex. This was almost 10 years ago. I was in my 30s and had only recently married Alex. With Alex working so hard even before we got married, I expected life with him to be difficult, but he was gone for so long that I felt completely alone. At first, I tried to let Alex relax at home during the rare times he would be there, but my frustration grew. I became harsh with him every time I saw his face. Alex would try to soothe me, but when he saw that I was still unsatisfied, he started to ignore me. I wanted him to notice me, no matter how busy he was with his work, because we were married. This emotion overwhelmed me, and I couldn't look at Alex objectively any longer. Whenever I picked a fight with him, he would always say, "I'm going to settle down soon, and then we'll go to that island you like." But it never happened. "Work is more important than me, isn't it?" I asked. "If so, don't force yourself to come home. I'm tired too, and seeing you so exhausted makes me sad." No matter how many horrible things I said to him, Alex never took them seriously, and I started to have a nagging feeling that our marriage was ending. Soon after, Alex could tell I wasn't even mad at him anymore and had no feelings left for him. I didn't suspect anything at first, because he worked in a department with many business trips. But one day, I found a receipt and a membership card for a hotel near our house in his suit pocket after he returned from a business trip. The receipt showed that he had stayed at the hotel on a day when he was supposedly out of town, and he had accumulated points for more than one night. As a successful businessman who was admired at work, Alex was quite popular with the ladies. I guessed that he had found someone else. Why should I struggle when he is enjoying himself with another woman? I went out at night, trying to distract myself from Alex's betrayal, and made plans on the weekends too. It was fun for a while, but eventually I grew tired of forcing myself to smile and not being able to truly enjoy myself. Perhaps it was finally time for Alex and me to be free. We were both avoiding each other, not acting like a married couple. It would be better if Alex was happier with someone other than me. I supposed it was time to move on to the next chapter of my life. But this was the man I used to love, until I realized I didn't want to spend my life with him anymore. It took a lot of courage for me to ask for a divorce. I also wondered if there was really no other option but to end it, but it seemed that Alex had a new girlfriend. After days of deliberation, I made my decision and sent a message to Alex. "Will you come home early today? I need to talk to you." He replied right away, "I need to talk to you too, and I'll try to leave as soon as possible." I found myself thinking that Alex must not want a divorce, even though I was certain I had made up my mind. Just thinking about it made my heart race so fast that I struggled to breathe. Alex's heart wasn't with me. It had gone to someone else. Let's not cry anymore. At the very least, I should end things with a smile. I waited for Alex to return home. It was shortly after 9 p.m. when he arrived. He had lost an unexpected amount of weight. His kind eyes and tone of voice were still the same, but there was a gap between us that seemed impossible to bridge. Alex, who had never been a man of many words, kept looking down and stayed silent except for a few words while I spoke. I wanted to end the conversation with respect because I felt he was making a lot of sacrifices for me. We were married, albeit for a short time, and we were about to divorce. So why wouldn't he tell me how he felt? I became increasingly angry and began to argue with him. However, Alex remained silent and listened to what I had to say. I wanted him to say something, so I told him that I knew about his new girlfriend. He probably thought I was oblivious. If he knew I knew everything, he would become impatient and make excuses. Hearing my words, Alex looked at me in surprise, then smiled briefly. After a pause, he asked, "What do you know?" Strangely, I couldn't help but laugh at his joking tone, which made Alex laugh too. For the first time in a long time, we laughed together. Regardless of the conversation's topic, I was overjoyed to laugh with Alex like we used to. We talked again after that, which felt strange. Maybe it was because he realized I knew about the affair. Alex's face seemed revitalized. "Let's stop attacking each other. I don't want to leave you because I don't like you," he said. Alex agreed with my proposal. We decided to clean our room and share our belongings so that we could leave at any time. They were all precious memories, but they were also things I wanted to keep hidden for a while. Alex has always been the type of person who uses things he's had for years, but today he didn't hesitate to throw them away. His grace overwhelmed me even more. "Take anything you want. It's all my fault. So this is my atonement," he said when the room was clean and we only had our own belongings left. Alex's eyes seemed to well up with tears as he said this. Did he feel sad while cleaning up the mess? It was clear to me because I felt the same way. You still have time to think about it, don't you? Let's clean up one step at a time. I decided to take a break for the rest of the day after cleaning up the mess. I took some time to clear my mind. I should be able to get compensation from my unfaithful husband. But it was clear that our relationship had already ended. Besides, I didn't want to taint my memories of Alex any further. As I was getting ready for bed, Alex entered the room. He climbed into bed and gently drew me into his arms. "Hey, this is weird, and I feel bad for your girlfriend," I said. Alex quietly replied, "Just one more time, I want to be by your side." I stiffened slightly. He was trembling as he wrapped his arms around me. "Are you crying?" I asked, but he didn't respond. I noticed that his body was lighter and bonier as I stroked his back. "Are you sure you're okay? You look like you've lost some weight." When I said this, his body stopped shaking. "I've been losing weight," he said, pulling away from me and taking a deep breath. "Okay, is there anything else I should know? Are you sure you're okay?" It had been a long time since I had touched Alex, and I was surprised by how different his body felt. His physique had always been stocky and muscular. Even when he was busy, he enjoyed working out, but he told me, "She likes me like this." I felt sad once more. He's doing it for her. Why doesn't he just forget about me if he enjoys being with her so much that he's changed? I see. Then there's no need to cry because it's the last day. Or is it tears of joy? To keep my sadness at bay, I said something sarcastic that I didn't need to say. "You're still the same. I like that part of you too. I wish you a happy life from tomorrow. I'll be praying for you wherever you are," Alex said lightly, and then he began to snore. He was a man who moved at his own pace until the end. "I hope so as well," I murmured to his sleeping face before falling asleep. The next day, I overslept because I had stayed up late cleaning. When I awoke, Alex was no longer in bed. When I entered the living room, I noticed an A4-sized envelope on the table. When I opened it, I found a bank book and a slew of documents inside. Among them were papers related to marital property and a large sum of money in my name. I also discovered the divorce papers in a small envelope. Alex's section had already been filled out, and all that remained was for me to complete mine and submit it. In a panic, I dialed Alex's cell phone, but it had been disconnected. I spent several days asking his parents and friends about his whereabouts, but none of them would tell me. I had no choice but to contact his company, where I discovered that Alex had resigned a few months earlier. It would have made sense if he left because of a new girlfriend, but why go to such lengths? Why didn't anyone tell me anything? I grew suspicious of people, and there appeared to be no way to contact Alex. The mental fatigue that had built up since before the divorce nearly crushed me. Alex had gone to the trouble of arranging compensation for me, and now that I was free, I decided to spend some time in a place I really enjoyed. I arrived at the remote island that took nearly a day to reach from the mainland. The island was depopulated, with about 3,000 people living there. I had visited it once with Alex and was captivated by its natural beauty and the slow flow of time. Alex had promised we would return to the island once his work was finished. I missed him, but maybe what I needed now was the peace and quiet of this place. A few months later, I quit my job and moved to the remote island after renting out the house. It was a risky move, but I knew I couldn't stay in my house any longer. I wasn't sure how Alex had paid off the mortgage, but I knew he worked very hard. But there were too many memories to keep living alone in that house. However, I didn't want to waste Alex's efforts, so I didn't want to just let it go. There were many unanswered questions, but I couldn't ask Alex anymore. I planned to spend time on the quiet island, relaxing and letting myself heal. I began to adjust to island life and became acquainted with my neighbors. I had enough assets to live a normal life without working, but I realized that doing nothing was even more depressing. So I started working as a helper, assisting elderly neighbors with their needs. At first, I was treated as an outsider, but as I got used to the work, I was relieved to be accepted as one of the islanders. As I settled in, I learned from a coworker that a new client had arrived from the mainland for medical treatment. He had become ill and chose this island as his final residence because there was no available treatment. Moving to this island with no medical facilities would be difficult unless someone was well prepared for such a transition. I thought being in charge of his care would be challenging when the new client asked for a visit, and I was the only one free. I had heard about his condition, so I was nervous when I went to his house. We arrived at the small house on a hill with a view of the ocean. The house had been vacant for a long time and was renovated just enough to keep the wind and rain out. I questioned whether this was the best place for him to spend his final days. With concern, I rang the doorbell. "Come in," a small voice said, barely audible. I gave my usual greeting and entered. I found my client sitting in front of a window, with the sun and wind streaming in. I couldn't see his face clearly because of the backlighting, so I squinted as I approached. "It's a pleasure to meet you today, sir." As I looked at the face that turned to me, I was speechless. Alex, my ex-husband, sat there. We were both taken aback and just stood there, staring. Alex initiated the conversation. "You found me out," he said, smiling mischievously like before. "What exactly are you doing here?" I was so confused by Alex's presence, the fact that he wasn't supposed to be there, and the information I had heard at work that I couldn't speak properly. Alex grabbed my hand and forced me to sit next to him. He held my hand until I relaxed. I couldn't think of anything to say, and as I sat there, I heard a voice at the door. I wiped my tears and opened the door to find an elderly man standing there. He seemed surprised to see my tear-stained face, but he bowed, entered, and sat next to Alex. "How are you today?" he asked gently. Alex said there was nothing unusual and began chatting with him. The elderly man was most likely the island's only doctor. I remembered my colleagues mentioning that there were no inpatient facilities on the island and that the clinic nurse and doctor were its lifelines. It seemed that Alex had come to the island to spend his final days here. Though it was his decision, I listened intently to their conversation. I wondered if there was anything I could do to help. The doctor left after about 10 minutes of casual conversation. I couldn't help myself and ran after him. My flustered appearance seemed to startle him again, but when I told him of our relationship, he seemed to understand. I questioned the doctor about Alex's condition and future treatment, but he said, "I can't tell you without his consent." Maybe he felt sorry for me and added, "He won't be able to walk by himself very soon. It seems a shame for him to spend his final days alone, so please be there for him." I was stunned. What happened to Alex's girlfriend? I returned to the house with heavy steps where Alex was waiting. Alex appeared to have anticipated my questioning the doctor and greeted me with a smile. "You're back." I couldn't leave Alex, so I asked if I could spend the night. His house only had a few pieces of luggage and a couple of futons. It was the first time I'd slept beside Alex since we discussed divorce. As I cuddled under the covers with him, we told each other how we got here. I was eager to ask about his illness, but decided it wasn't time to discuss painful topics, so we reminisced. This also stemmed from my feelings about his relationship with her. I asked if he hadn't brought her to the island before I stayed, but he just laughed and brushed it off. The fact that he didn't say anything suggested something sad had happened. I was careful not to hurt his feelings by asking further questions. The next day, I informed my employer of what had occurred and decided to take some time off. I wanted to spend the time Alex had left with him. I took Alex, who couldn't walk very far, around the island in a wheelchair. There were places I remembered from my previous visit, places and scenery I wanted to show him for the first time. It was fulfilling just to be together. I wished we'd been this close when we were married. Even after our divorce, I discovered my feelings for Alex had grown stronger. But there was nothing I could do about it now. Alex would be confused if I told him. Like friends, I would stay by his side. The good times were fleeting, but the illness gradually took its toll on Alex. His strength had deteriorated to the point where he could no longer go out or even take short walks. Even daily tasks became difficult, and he began to doze off more frequently. The doctor came to see him every day, but the only relief was that he was no longer in pain. I couldn't believe that this was natural, and that he would leave me so soon. I nursed Alex, never leaving his side, so he wouldn't be alone when he woke up, which could happen at any time. Sometimes he'd wake up and tell me the rest of a dream, and other times he'd talk about old memories as if they had just happened. I cherished every moment, and my love for him only deepened my sadness. Alex gradually stopped waking up after that. When we stopped talking, I stayed by his side, reading his favorite books and describing the sights and sounds outside so he could understand. One day, I wanted to tell him about a beautiful sunset, so I held his hand and tried to speak to him. Alex's hand was cold to the touch. He was barely breathing, and his chest moved unnaturally. I panicked and called the doctor, who said he would be there immediately. I waited, feeling as if my heart was being ripped out of my chest by the out-of-control situation. I hoped it was a misunderstanding. I wanted the doctor to reassure me that everything would be fine. However, when he arrived, he took a look and said, "His blood pressure has already dropped quite a bit. Let him go in peace. I believe he wants you to stay with him, so I'll sit this one out. Don't worry, I'll be right here if anything happens, so please stay by his side." The doctor then said goodbye to Alex and walked out. So the time had come. I knew it would come, but it was unbearable. I was delighted to have met you. There were some challenges, but the truth is that I adore you. I held Alex's hand and whispered in his ear. Then he gently squeezed my hand back. It was medically impossible, but I clearly felt it. Soon after, he took his last breath and passed quietly. I couldn't stop crying, but I was glad to have been there for him at the end. I was so busy after he died that I didn't have time to mourn until after the burial. When I finally returned home after sorting Alex's belongings, I noticed that mail had accumulated like a mountain. I was struck by the nostalgic handwriting on one letter. Alex had written dozens of letters. I wondered how long it had been since I had spent every day with him, trying to stay close to him. His letters began on the day of our reunion. Alex had moved here in hopes of seeing me again, though he didn't expect to actually find me here. "It was difficult for me not to notice how surprised and delighted I was," he wrote. I couldn't stop laughing at how funny Alex's letters were, and the fact that Alex felt that way was the best compliment he could have given me. The date on the letters indicated that he had written one every day, but his handwriting became messier, and the length of the letters grew shorter as the days passed, showing the progression of his illness. With sadness, I continued reading until my eyes stopped at one point. He had written the truth about our divorce. Alex's illness started during our marriage. When he discovered it, there was nothing that could be done to help him, and the treatment he received as his last hope was ineffective and had side effects. Alex planned our divorce because he didn't want me to spend my life dealing with his disease, and I fell right into his trap. He hadn't expected me to suspect the existence of another woman, but he didn't deny it because he thought he could provide for me as compensation. Because I no longer required medical treatment, I wanted to liquidate all of my assets so that you could live freely, he wrote. What hurtful words I'd hurled at Alex, who had thought so much for me. I sincerely apologized. Tears flowed uncontrollably. Then there was a knock on the door. I quickly wiped my tears and opened it to find the doctor standing there. "What brings you here, doctor?" I asked. He handed me a sealed envelope, identical to the ones I had just read from Alex. He asked me to post it every day. He wrote a few days' worth of letters before falling into a coma and entrusted them to me. I couldn't refuse, and this is the last letter. He asked me to give it to you when you returned home. So this was what it was about. This was Alex's final letter. I thanked the doctor and read Alex's letter alone. When I opened it quietly and calmly, I found a thin but clear note that said, "Thank you, I love you." We had come so far, but our hearts remained connected. I love you too. When I said this, I thought I saw Alex's portrait smile a little. I am still living on this island, decades after Alex passed away. I am now officially recognized as an island resident. I built a grave next to where Alex's house used to stand, on the day I was sure I'd never leave the island. Alex used to look out the window every day, and I'm sure he still does. I intend to join him there one day, and I am at peace and very happy to be surrounded by memories of Alex. Thank you for sticking with me until the end. I'll see you in the next video.